information, including but not limited to text, graphics, images, and other materials contained in this podcast, are for informational purposes only. Nothing said or written in this podcast are intended to be substitutes for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you read or heard on this podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Healing on Purpose. I am your host, Shae, and I'm so excited about this episode today. I've prepared some things. We also have some new lighting if you're looking on YouTube, and we're just going to be upgrading because that is what life is about, continuously upgrading. So before we get started and jump into this episode, you guys really liked my ASMR of my drink, but honestly, I'd just be thirsty. So if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're watching or listening onto any of the other podcast apps, Spotify, Google Play, Apple, all of them, make sure you subscribe and follow. Today, I bought this like really cute wine glass from the dollar store, so don't get excited, but I'm just going to put some ice. And then I have a drink here. I'm not going to share it just because we ain't sponsored, but ooh. That sounds really good. And then we're just going to pour it. Oh yeah, I've never had this one, so we're just going to taste it. Ooh, refreshing. That's not bad. It is a lemon ginger flavor. So I'll be drinking on that. Let me know what you'll be drinking on, either on our Instagram at Chronically Good. And when I put like a promo, let me know what you're drinking, or do it on our YouTube channel. So I'm really excited about this episode. I recently went to Los Angeles and I was traveling, and as I was just kind of going through the motions of getting back into traveling again, it's always so awkward now because I haven't done it in so long. But I'm really starting to get more confident in relying on the accessibility features that are available to me, especially in places like an airport. So anytime I fly, I always make sure to put on my boarding pass that I want a wheelchair, because I realized that if I am not walking around with my cane, I have a rose gold cane, because I honestly get very tired from walking. And so when I walk with my cane, people are more susceptible to give me my disability rights, essentially, and I don't get the like looking up and down and all of those things. But this particular day that I went to the airport, I was super late and I forgot my cane, and I felt really like icky, almost embarrassed to ask for my I guess accessibility features. I'm blanking on the correct term, but I always get a wheelchair. And even though it was on my boarding pass and I needed to go, I went up to. So, what you do is you check in your bag, you check yourself in, and then you go to the spot to get a wheelchair in the airport. And I did all of that, and then I went to get the wheelchair. And admittedly, I was late to the airport, and I was, but I still had like 20 minutes before boarding starts. So I had enough time to like go through security and all of those things. And so she looked at my boarding pass, she looked me up and down, and she said, with her mouth, it'll be faster if you just walk. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm asking for a wheelchair, do you think anything would be faster? No. I'm asking for a wheelchair because I, one, have the right to, so you don't need to question or barter with me or let me know that it would be faster if I just walked. And two, you don't need to look me up and down to determine if you think that I qualify for the service that you're supposed to provide. And I just think that, like, while I don't necessarily fully blame that woman, if you're going to be, if your job is to give disability services, my hope is that you would have some compassion towards those disabilities, whether you can see them or not. And so that was kind of like a gut wrenching introduction back into traveling again and being around people again and remembering how insensitive they are. And it was also the first time that I went to the airport without my walking stick, my cane, which I now, after reflection, have realized that that has been something that I always carried around with me when I knew I was going to get disability services. And it was kind of like my emblem of, hey, don't look at me weird or count me out because I look younger or I quote unquote look healthy. So there's no way I could be disabled. And kind of just like my symbol of like, hey, I am disabled. I have a cane. And I'm not going to beat myself up about thinking that way because our system is so embedded with ableism that I know that I've been taught that someone isn't disabled unless they're in a wheelchair, or they have a walker, or crutches, or some physical representation of their disability. And that is not correct. Even though I've been disabled for over 10 years, I still have that thinking. So for someone who I mean, I honestly don't know if she's disabled or anything, but I can see how that be the mind frame. And just those simple, like little one off comments, it'll be faster if you walk. Which, first of all, if you've ever been in a wheelchair at the airport, this is the experience. You get in the wheelchair, they scan your boarding pass, and then you get to cut line in security. So it wouldn't be faster. It would actually be faster to take a wheelchair. But nonetheless, whatever. It really was just like a punch in my gut and it hurt me really bad. But I am learning not to take everything personal. Everything is really just a projection of other people's feelings. And I know that it was like a one-off comment. It was early in the morning, and I'm not making excuses for her. I'm just in the mindset of I'm not taking this personal. And the way that I have to do that is to kind of talk myself through why I'm not taking it personal. Um, so yeah, that sucked. Now, the situation that really like set me over the edge in the airport is when I landed in LAX. What they essentially do is they have your name on this iPad, and as you get out of your seat and you walk the runway, the people have the wheelchairs line up. If you've never gotten a wheelchair in the airport, you may now notice that there are wheelchairs kind of lined up, or sometimes they're running a little late, so you have to like stay on the plane and wait for them. So I was the only person on the plane who had requested a wheelchair, and I saw my name on the iPad, and I was like, "Oh, that's for me." And he looked me up and down, did the whole thing, like, I get it, whatever. It's not important. So you can tell that he's kind of annoyed that he has to take me to baggage claim, which like where else am I gonna go? You take me to baggage claim. So he takes me to baggage claim and he sits me near a bench and he's like, all right. And I'm like, are you gonna help me get my bag? And he's like, oh, we don't help get bags. And I was like, you don't help people get their bags, so you what do you mean? I've gotten these services for years and I've always had help with my bags. Now, okay, I did fudge a little bit. I've only been getting this service for about a year. So in 2019, I got them. Of course, I didn't really do that much traveling in 2020. And then I had previously traveled in May of 2021 to LAX, by the way. And he's like, no, we're bought out by a different company, so we don't do that anymore. And I said, oh, really? When did that happen? And he was like, January. And I was like, oh, I traveled in May and they helped me with my bag. And he's like, no, we switched companies in January. And I was like, I know. I traveled in May. So, if you know anything about me, I'm the first one to get on Twitter when someone makes me mad, especially about ableism. I love calling out ableism. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm sure that there are some things that I say, even some things that I do that may be ableistic. I don't know if that's a word, but I like to call it out. I like to be corrected, and I like to just make sure that we are moving towards a less ableism society. So, um, I was just kind of like, that's interesting. What is the name of the company? And as I started asking more questions, he was like, you know what? I'll do it for you. I'll pick it up for you. Now, usually you would tip these people for helping you. Did you think I tipped him? No, 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 no. I didn't. Because this is not a restaurant where you're getting paid $2.15 and somehow the burden of giving me a tip and your livelihood is on me instead of the people who employed you, which I'm very against I don't understand why workers and bartenders and stuff get paid minimum wage, but whatever. Um, these people get paid a I don't know how much they get paid, but I know it's not like $2 or whatever. Like at a restaurant. So he was really fighting with me on picking up my bag, and I have a heavy bag. And it didn't matter. I don't care if I had a duffel, I don't care if I had a little briefcase the size of a tooth. If I am getting disability services, I expect to get the full service and help. If I'm asking for help and it is your job to help, I expect you to help me. And that is not something that I should have to be fighting for if this is a service. I shouldn't have to be advocating for this service, for you to do the service. That is your job. And correct me if I'm wrong. If they are not supposed to help you with your bags, if that's some sort of liability, please let me know. But every single time that I've been to the airport, they have helped me with my bag. The flight attendants have helped me get the bag on the overhead bin. Strangers next to me have helped me get my bag on the overhead bin. I looked it up immediately to make sure that I wasn't arguing a point that was incorrect with this man, and he knew more about his job than me. And so clearly, when I Googled his company, did it say that they are supposed to help you, will you, from the checkpoint to the plane, and even if you need help getting to your seat, they have special wheelchair that can go down the aisles and take you directly to your seat. So when you land and you need that wheelchair, they'll bring it out to you again, take you all the way to baggage claim, help you with your bag, and basically help you inside of your car. So later in the show, I just have a little note to that man who thought it was necessary to fight with me on the services that I know that I deserve. Thank you. So, anyways, also, let me drink. I got a little heated. I just get really mad when I have to fight for, like, I already have to advocate so much for myself, and that is something that is hard for me because I have a history of being a people pleaser and I've been working on it and I've done a lot of self reflection and what are the things that I need and being able to speak up for those things and advocate for me. But when a system is in place that is supposed to be helping you, why do I then have to also advocate and make sure that the people who are employed to give that service give me the service fully? Because you're essentially looking at me and going, you can pick up your own bag. You don't know that. I actually can't pick up my own bag. Even when I would travel with my friends, they would help me with my bags because everyone freaking knows. I'm sorry, I'm getting heated again. Everyone knows that I just need a little extra help. I can't carry things that are heavy. I can't even really bend down. I get super dizzy. So would you rather me pass out in your airport or just, I don't know, do the disability services that you have provided? Anyways, so I had a great time in LA once I got there. And I ran into my friend as soon as I got in the car. I was like, I can't believe this guy. And one thing I will say is that if someone comes to you ranting and they're upset, I don't care if you agree with them or not. it is not your position to go, well, maybe you should really just like match their energy. That's all I'm looking for. I'm a Sagittarius and I basically know that I'm right. So just match my energy. And she did that perfectly and was like, that's so stupid. Oh my God, you need to call them. And I was like, yeah, you're on my vibe. So shout out to you. You know who you are. I don't know if you want me to name you, but thank you. So when I was going back to Houston after I had an amazing trip, like my trip to LA was one of the best. Um, I used to live there, so I have a lot of family and friends that are just like family. So I got to see a lot of them, and it was 4th of July, so we did fireworks, which honestly, if you follow me on Instagram, was the most insane fireworks I've ever seen in person in my life. And I was definitely terrified. But when I was on the flight back to Houston, I decided I'm going to watch a movie. And there's something about watching a movie on an airplane that's just magical. It's different. It's a different experience than sitting at home watching a movie. I don't know if it's because you're like trapped in this little air bubble and you're sitting next to a stranger like so closely. You would never be sitting to a stranger that close ever in your life. And you're just like having an emotional moment. It doesn't matter if I'm watching a super happy movie, I'm going to cry. So, most of the movies on there I had seen, and I'm a huge fan of Michael B. Jordan. So, I was going to watch Creed for the 50,000th time, but I was like, you know what? Let's try something new. So I started watching this movie called On the Basis of Sex, and I had no idea what it was about. I was like, okay. So it was about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And if you don't know who that is, she basically was a civil rights lawyer and she fought for gender equality and women's rights and did a lot of it in front of the Supreme Court. And then she was appointed later on. Anyways, this movie is so good if you've never seen it. And I didn't know a lot about her early history. I really just knew about her work once she was appointed by Clinton and all of that stuff. And she is like a G, they call her Notorious RBG. Now, I don't know about all of that and my stance on that, but I do know that she was a badass and especially from the movie. So I learn best by documentary and movies. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what happened. So essentially, she was one of a few women lawyer or law students at Harvard Law. And the cute thing was is her husband was in a year before her. So she was like working her butt off, you know. She wasn't really into like impressing anyone because it was very clear that the dean of students didn't really want women and was like, men could take your spot, da da da. Like, why do we have to give it to women? He was terrible. But again, that was the movie, so I don't really know. It's probably way worse in real life. So she's killing it. And then her husband, spoiler alert, this is going to be a whole spoiler alert on the movie, but her husband gets cancer and it is so bad. Also, maybe we shouldn't watch the movie because her husband was played by Armie Hammer. And I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what's going on with that case, but I remember seeing something about cannibalism and I don't know who to believe because I really didn't watch it, but I think he's canceled. I'm not fully sure, but our BG story needs to be told. So, viewers' discretion advised. Anyway, so he got cancer and it was really sad. So, she was going to her classes and his classes. Beast, boss, and he was a year ahead of her. So she was killing it. She was like helping typing his papers. She was staying up all night. They had a child. It was beautiful. Like, wow. So he survives cancer. He gets a job in New York. But remember, they're going to school at Harvard. And so she basically asked, like, can she finish her studies at Columbia? And the dean of students, who didn't want women there anyway, was like, no, we're Harvard. We're not going to go to Columbia. When men had done the same exact thing for lesser. So I guess it wasn't approved. Honestly, that part wasn't clear, but she ended up going to Columbia Law. So, like, Harvard and Columbia, girl, smart. So she's killing it, whatever. She becomes a lawyer, and no one wants to hire her. Women, you know, I believe it was the 60s. God, a terrible time for women's rights. And so She was like, fine, I'm going to become a professor at Rutgers. So she starts being a professor at Rutgers. And then some years went by. She's doing the professor thing, kind of helping young law students get in the grind and kind of really being the one to rile them up and get them excited about fighting for justice, especially with women's rights. So she has a daughter, right? And her daughter essentially calls her out for not really doing any of the work that she used to do. And I was like, you're basically just a professor. And her mom was like, skirt, no, I'm going to show you. So then her husband noticed, like, kind of how sad she was just being a professor, and she kind of lost that fire. And her husband was a tax lawyer. Now, I don't really know what a tax lawyer is, but he found this case that was like a man who was being discriminated against with the tax code. So there's all these laws about women's rights that they can't do certain things, blah, blah, blah. I think at that time, women couldn't even have their own bank account. They had to be married, and their bank account had to be in their husband's name. So if they weren't married, they couldn't have a bank account. How insane. Literally could not have a bank account. I just opened a bank account yesterday on the internet. Like, we've come a long way, but not long enough. So her husband was like, there's this case on tax code where a man is being discriminated against for his gender. It's essentially what the case was is that the law was written that you can get a caregiver's tax exemption only if you were a woman caring for someone or if you were a husband caring for your wife. And nowhere did it state that if you were an unmarried man, you can get the caregiver tax, even though he was a caregiver. So this was the first time, or an example, probably not the first time, but it was an example that that the law was discriminating against a man, especially a white man. So she got excited about the case and was like, yo, we can take this case and help break open gender inequality and go before the court and fight to make sure that there is no law discriminating against someone on the basis of sex, which is why the movie is called The Basis of Sex. So essentially, what she was doing was making sure that this guy wasn't going to be discriminated against, which, big deal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and she opened up the floodgates for all of these other cases, which was so dope. You got to watch the movie to see how it all goes down. My point in all of this is free Britney. So just how the spotlight is on Free Britney right now, and people are up in arms. How could this be happening? This conservatorship is crazy. Now let's go back a little bit. If you have no idea what Free Britney is, you've been living under a rock. Let me give you a brief little synopsis. So Britney Spears has been under conservatorship, which essentially means someone is her guardian, making all of her decisions for her, her money, everything. She cannot make any decisions where she works, where she wants to travel, who she hangs out with, how her bills are paid, what bills are paid, if she goes to therapy, if she doesn't go to therapy. Really insane stuff, all controlled. So, like, imagine if Britney Spears was 5 and her parents were making all of her decisions for her. That is her conservatorship. And she's been in it since 2008. In 2008, I was 16. I'm turning 30 this year. She's been in this conservatorship for a very long time, and they have hidden what they've been doing to her for a crazy amount. Recently, she spoke out to the courts. She didn't even know that she can contest the conservatorship, that she didn't have to be in it, and she can say, hey, what is this? This is crazy. Her lawyers did not tell her. And this is super common in other disability cases. So I bring up the Ruth Bader Ginsburg case because they were able to take that tax code and essentially use the discrimination on the basis of sex from that one case and go through all of the areas in the law where women's rights are not equal to men's. Gender equality not existing. Now, of course, this is years and decades of fighting. We're still fighting for gender equality today, but that's how they were able to kind of get their to-do list and get going and get it all. I keep doing this hand motion of like shaking the foundation because you just need to like break the foundation, shake it up, and build something new. And that's essentially what I think should be happening with the Britney Spears case. So this is not just about Britney Spears, this international super pop star. Yes, everything that is happening to her, extremely terrible. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be reviewed. 100% absolutely. Now, if you think that case is terrible, imagine all the people who are not international pop stars and are just living their everyday lives and are forced to have, and this is a trigger warning for um, SA, not SA, but like sexual things, just a quick trigger warning. Imagine all of the people who have disabilities and are forced to have to end their pregnancies, who are forced to be sterilized and lose the rights to raise their own children. This happens all the time. 1 in 4 Americans are living with some sort of disability. That's 61 million Americans. If you go to the doctor and you say the wrong thing, you can be put in a conservatorship. No problem. You can be put in a conservatorship for less than saying the wrong thing. I mean, you can be institutionalized for saying the wrong thing to your doctors, to your friends, and it's honestly terrifying because the laws are set up that way. If you have a disability, you are meant to be excluded from the rest of the world and put away. Think about when you were in school. If you went to public school, if you went to private school, the quote unquote special ed, those with disabilities, were put in different rooms. You probably didn't see them at lunch or recess. Or if you did, it was don't look at them. The system has been set up this way for years and years and decades. There's so many laws about disabled people that makes them inhumane and not people, not humans, not able to live life freely just because they're disabled. So I urge the people who are screaming free Britney because they don't think she's disabled enough to be getting treated this way. I want you to just think about that sentence. It doesn't matter if she's disabled enough. No one should be treated this way. No one. And so while I understand that so many people were upset that Britney Spears couldn't take her IUD out, I'm glad that people are upset because I need people to understand that this happens all the time. Her case is not unique. It is very common. I found a quote from Zoe and Rebecca from the ACLU, and they explain that often courts approve of people with disabilities to lose their rights to reproductive freedom. Spears, this is a quote, Spears' experiences is a part of a long history of people with disabilities, more often of people of color, being forcibly sterilized, forced to end pregnancies, or losing their rights to raise their own children. It it makes me really sad that it takes for an international pop star for this to come to surface. And even with me, there were so many things in my research that I didn't understand and I didn't know. And it's so overwhelming to know that these laws were written to isolate and discriminate specifically against disabled people when there's so many people living with disabilities in this country. 61 million is not a small number. Even when you just think about how we're taught to think about people with disabilities and how they're small or less than, or they can't do specific things. Like when you look at a lot of these laws, you can pay people with disabilities lower than minimum wage. You can pay people with disabilities lower than minimum wage, and that's allowed. That's legal. What is the minimum wage if it's not for everyone? Like, that is insane. I think too, a lot of people view others with disabilities as being poor. And so for this to be happening to mega superstar, super rich Britney Spears is so unheard of. And this is why it shouldn't be happening to her. I just want to keep reiterating that this shouldn't happen to anyone. Whether you have 5 cents to your name or $50 million. I don't know Britney Spears' net worth, but like also her father getting paid to be her conservator and like her lawyers getting paid more out of her money than she is even allowed to have is absolutely insane. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at the information from the Free Britney movement and hearing about the stuff that's been going on in this case for so many years. Like 2018 is a long time to be under control of your father, who, if you know anything about Britney Spears, she doesn't even like her dad. Um, and I mean, I remember watching this documentary that she did. I think I was in high school at the time, and her dad was like definitely putting on for the cameras and like making cream of wheat or something and being like, she loves when I make this. And Britney was like, pretty much get out. And just seeing how this was all set up perfectly, and for that to be his own daughter, like that's insane. But as we think about this case, I don't want to forget about all the people who are currently in very similar conservatorships and can't get out, who are of sound mind to be able to make the decisions for themselves regarding their reproductive freedom, regarding where they live, how their money is spent. If you've ever watched the movie on Netflix, I Care a Lot, that shows a really good way that conservatorships work in the US. It's very interesting. You can have a conservatorship put on you without you even knowing that a case is being formulated against you. And then you can't get out of it because you're deemed by the courts, who may have never met you or seen you, that you're disabled and can't make decisions for yourself. Like, that is so insane. Um, So I just hope that we keep that in the forefront as we free Britney. We need to be freeing everyone that is in these unjust conservatorships and just looking at all the disability laws, similar to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who used the tax law that was discriminatory against men because she knew that that was the only way the courts would listen to her, and use that same formula and help to free other people, just like Britney. Okay, here are my last thoughts. To the mail worker at the airport who told me to get my bag after he wheeled me from the gate to baggage claim, and to the woman who felt the need to look me up and down when I asked for a wheelchair that was on my boarding pass and told me to just walk because it would be faster, I have a few words for you. Just because you don't see a physical representation of my disability doesn't mean you get to invalidate me. And to the man who, instead of going around me, stepped over me like I was a chair and not a human in a chair. I hope that every single flight that you get on for the rest of your life is delayed. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I pray that you have a good week. Our next episode will be coming out July 25th. And as always, I love you guys so much. And cheers in systemic ableism. Okay, bye.